Good morning, aviators. Today we're covering Stage 1, Phase 3, Scenario 1, Takeoffs and Landings. The simulated scenario is as follows. You are flying to a neighboring airport to sign time-sensitive business documents that will expire tonight. The winds are 10 knots gusting to 15, and it's 30 degrees away from the runway centerline. Some risks to consider. Problems that occur while flying slowly near the ground, traffic, hazards, and communications, learning how to land, failure to apply appropriate wind corrections, gusting wind conditions, flaring too high or too low, failure to make prompt decisions to reject an attempted landing and go around, and failure to maintain a safe speed or retract the flaps to the takeoff setting when going around. Remember, a good flight starts with a good pre-flight. Review your 91.103 Northwest Craft items. That stands for NOTAMs, weather, known delays, runways, alternates, fuel, and takeoff and landing distances. Some new items to consider on this flight are situational awareness, weight and balance, traffic pattern, and go-arounds and rejected landings. From Chapter 2 of the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, situational awareness is the accurate perception and understanding of all the factors and conditions within the 5 fundamental risk elements that affect safety before, during, and after the flight. It means being aware of what's going on in and outside the cockpit and what is likely to happen in the airspace around you. Some barriers to good SA are fatigue, stress, and work overload. Be careful not to fixate on any one item and try to fly relaxed so you can pay attention to other aircraft in the airspace and ATC instructions. You can practice by listening to live ATC and watching aircraft on ADS-B or FlightAware while trying to predict what will happen next. You can add to this by flying your home simulator at the same time for additional realism. Chapter 10 of the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge covers weight and balance. Your aircraft isn't like your car, where you can cram it with as much crap as you can and call it good. An overweight aircraft will have difficulty getting off the ground. An unbalanced aircraft can be difficult to control and may even be impossible to recover from unusual attitudes. In general, an aircraft that is too nose-heavy will have difficulty raising its nose, especially during takeoff and landings. An aircraft that is too tail-heavy will be difficult to recover in a stalled condition. The basic equation for weight and balance is WAM, weight times arm equals moment. We multiply the weight of an object inside the aircraft by the distance from some reference line to get its moment in pound-inches. That's weight of the object in pounds times the distance in inches equals the moment. We add up the sum of all the weights inside the aircraft, the sum of the weights, and we add up all the moments or the sum of the moments, and we divide it by the sum of the weights. So the total moments in pound-inches will be divided by the total weight in pounds, and the pounds will cross out, and we'll be left with a value of inches, which is the distance of the center of gravity of the aircraft from that reference line. And don't forget, you need to include the empty weight and moment of the aircraft in your calculations. You can now compare your total weight and CG, or moment, to the POH loading graph to determine if your plane is overweight or out of balance. Let's talk about the traffic pattern. The traffic pattern is a standardized pattern around the airfield that all pilots adhere to minimize the risk of collision and maximize efficiency and safety. From Chapter 8 of the Airplane Flying Handbook, the traffic pattern is a rectangle around the airport with standard legs, departure, crosswind, downwind, base, and final. Standard turns are made to the left, but some airports will have a right pattern if there is a need to deconflict traffic or minimize noise over a town. If started on the surface, you will climb out to 700 feet above ground level and make a turn to crosswind. You continue climbing to 1,000 feet above ground and make a level turn to the downwind leg, during which you maintain 1,000 feet above the surface while flying parallel to the runway. You may need to crab into the wind to account for any crosswind. Abeam the numbers, you will begin your landing flow. I like carb heat, power, mix, flaps, pitch for 85, and shoot for a 500 foot per minute rate of descent. We descend down to 700 feet above surface, mirroring our crosswind turn, and make another turn to base. We'll deploy another notch of flaps and slow down to 75 miles per hour. Turn final, deploy your last notch of flaps and pitch for 65. Key elements here are maintaining alignment with the centerline, maintaining your airspeed, and making a stabilized approach to the numbers. If you're too high, you can always throw in a slip, where you bank your wings into the wind and then use opposite rudder to maintain centerline. That will increase your descent rate. And remember, landing is just slow flight over the runway. If you're entering the traffic pattern in the air, the standard entry is to make a 45-degree angle to the downwind leg at pattern altitude. If some knucklehead flinged himself onto the runway, or if for any reason you decide that attempting to land would be unsafe, you can always initiate a go-around. Chapter 13 of the Airplane Flying Handbook outlines the procedure for a go-around. Advance the throttle at takeoff power and adjust pitch to arrest the sink rate. Once you have enough airspeed, you can pitch for a climb attitude and set your flaps to a climb setting. Maintain positive control of the aircraft as you climb out, and once you've cleared your obstacles, you can raise your flaps all the way. The absolute last step is to make a radio call to the tower or surrounding traffic that you're going around. Remember, cram, climb, course, clean, and call. As always, we aviate, navigate, and then communicate. Fly the plane, know where you're going, and then make your radio calls in that order. Finally, let's talk about landing the aircraft. General guidance. It's just slow flight over the runway. Make a stabilized approach to the numbers and transition to slow flight just over the surface. Put your eyes down the runway and focus on maintaining control flight all the way until you are fully stopped. Alright, that about covers it for this one. If you need a hand with your flight planning, click here. We're going to have a good flight. See you guys out there.